According to Daniel, this is a prophetic red flag. The little horn, Daniel's key to identifying the Antichrist. Right now, as you're watching this, there's a 2,500-year-old prophecy that's been quietly unfolding around us. Most people have no idea they're witnessing it happen in real time. But you're about to discover something that will completely change how you see the world's current events. Deep in the pages of the Bible, there's a mysterious figure called the Little Horn. Now, before you think this is just another biblical character study, let me tell you something that might shock you. This isn't just any symbol. It's a detailed blueprint, a prophetic roadmap that's pointing directly to something happening right now in our world. And here's what nobody's talking about. I'm going to show you 3 things that will fundamentally shift your perspective. First, how an ancient Jewish captive received visions so detailed they read like tomorrow's headlines. Second, the 5 unmistakable characteristics of this prophetic figure that are showing up in today's leaders. And third, this is the part that gave me chills when I discovered it, how the pieces are falling into place right now, in ways that most people are completely missing. But here's what's really unsettling. The more you understand this prophecy, the more you'll realize we might be living in the generation that sees it fulfilled. Let's start with Daniel, but not the Sunday school version you might remember. This is the story of a young man who received visions so terrifying, so specific about future world events, that they've been confusing scholars for centuries. Until now. Daniel was captured and taken to Babylon as a teenager, but God gave him something extraordinary: the ability to see through time itself. And what he saw in Daniel chapter 7 wasn't just symbolic imagery. It was a detailed preview of world history that's been unfolding exactly as predicted for over 2 millennia. In this vision, Daniel sees 4 great beasts rising from the sea. Now, here's where it gets interesting. These aren't random monsters. Each beast represents a world empire that would dominate history. But it's not the beasts themselves that should concern us. It's what comes after them. Out of the 4th beast, the most terrifying one, rises something small but deadly: a little horn. This isn't just a small detail tucked away in an ancient text. This little horn becomes the prophecy's central focus. And here's the question that should keep you up at night. If the first 4 beasts have already appeared in history exactly as Daniel predicted, what does that tell us about the timing of the little horn? To understand why this matters to your life right now, we need to decode these 4 beasts. Because once you see the pattern Daniel revealed, you'll never look at world news the same way again. The first beast, a lion with eagle's wings, most scholars agree represents Babylon, the very empire that captured Daniel. Prophecy fulfilled with surgical precision. The second beast, a bear raised on one side with 3 ribs in its mouth, represents the Medo-Persian Empire that conquered Babylon. Again, history unfolded exactly as Daniel foresaw. The third beast, a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, symbolizes Alexander the Great's Greek Empire, which split into 4 kingdoms after his death. Once again, prophecy and history align perfectly. But here's where things get absolutely chilling. The 4th beast is described as terrifying and powerful beyond imagination, with iron teeth that crush everything. This represents the Roman Empire, an empire of unmatched brutality and reach. And here's the detail that should make your blood run cold. It's from this 4th beast that the little horn emerges. Now, if you're thinking, but the Roman Empire fell centuries ago, you're missing something crucial that biblical scholars have been debating for decades. What if this 4th beast represents not just historical Rome, but a revived Roman Empire? What if we're watching it rise again right now? Let me read you Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, and I want you to listen carefully to how specific this gets. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Stop right there. Notice what just happened. This isn't mystical symbolism. It's a detailed character profile. The little horn has human intelligence, eyes like a human being, and is known for boastful, arrogant speech. But that's just the beginning. The prophecy gets more specific, more detailed, and more unsettling. I'm about to show you 5 characteristics of the little horn that are so precise, they read like a psychological profile of someone who could be alive today. Here's the first trait that should make you pay attention to current world events. The little horn rises to power by eliminating 3 other leaders. Daniel 7:8 shows us that this figure doesn't just win elections or gain influence through normal means. It literally uproots 3 other horns, 3 other centers of power. This suggests a violent, calculated takeover that removes obstacles to absolute control. Now, here's the question that might keep you awake tonight. In today's world of fragile alliances, proxy wars, and sudden regime changes, how hard would it be for a cunning political figure to orchestrate the downfall of 3 rivals? We've seen dictators throughout history eliminate competition, but the little horn will perfect this strategy on a global scale. And here's what's truly disturbing. The prophecy suggests we won't see it coming until it's already happened. The 3 kings will be uprooted, caught off guard, unprepared, eliminated before they realize the threat. The second characteristic hits even closer to home because it's something we can observe in real time. The little horn is known for boastful, blasphemous speech. Daniel 7:8 describes a mouth that spoke boastfully, but verse 25 reveals the true scope of this arrogance. He will speak against the Most High and oppress His holy people, and try to change the set times and the laws. This isn't just political bragging, this is spiritual warfare. The little horn doesn't just boast about earthly achievements, it directly challenges God's authority, mocks His people, and attempts to rewrite the moral foundations of society. How many leaders today use bold, divisive language that seems designed to provoke and polarize? How many are actively working to silence religious voices or redefine traditional moral boundaries? The pattern is already emerging, and it's happening faster than most people realize. But the third characteristic is where the prophecy becomes genuinely terrifying. The little horn will wage systematic war against God's people. Daniel 7:25 tells us, "He will oppress His holy people and try to change the set times and the laws." The holy people will be delivered into His hands for a time, times, and half a time. This isn't random persecution. It's organized, systematic oppression designed to break the faith of believers worldwide. And here's what should alarm you. This persecution is already beginning in various forms around the globe. From churches being shut down to believers being labeled as extremists, from Christian holidays being eliminated to biblical teachings being criminalized, the groundwork for this global persecution is being laid right now. The little horn will simply accelerate and systematize what's already happening. The fourth characteristic is perhaps the most subtle, but also the most profound. The little horn will attempt to change times and laws. This goes beyond normal legislative changes. The prophecy suggests a complete rewriting of societal norms, moral foundations, and even religious traditions. The little horn will present these changes as progress, as evolution, as necessary modernization. And here's the insidious part. In a world that values convenience over conviction, most people will accept these changes without question. How many traditions have already been abandoned in the name of progress? How many moral boundaries have been redefined as outdated? The little horn will complete this process on a global scale. But here's the fifth characteristic that changes everything. The little horn's power is temporary and limited. Daniel 7:25 specifies that this reign of terror will last for a time, times, and half a time, 3.5 years. Not indefinite, not permanent, limited by God's sovereign plan. This reveals two crucial truths that should give you hope even in the darkest scenarios. First, God remains in absolute control. The little horn can only go as far as God permits. Second, even in the worst persecution, there's an end date. Justice will prevail, and God's people will be vindicated. Now that you understand these 5 characteristics, here's the question that brings everything into sharp focus. Are we already seeing these traits manifest in today's world leaders and global systems? When we examine current global politics through the lens of Daniel's prophecy, the parallels become impossible to ignore. Political leaders are consolidating power in unprecedented ways. Alliances are forming that seem designed to concentrate authority. And everywhere we look, the world is crying out for someone, anyone, to bring order out of the chaos. Consider the European Union. What started as a simple trade agreement has evolved into a political and military confederation. Its members are diverse yet unified, strong yet fragile, iron mixed with clay, exactly as Daniel described. Could this be the revived Roman Empire from which the little horn emerges? But here's what most people miss. The little horn won't announce itself with fanfare. It will rise gradually, seemingly offering solutions to impossible problems. By the time people recognize the threat, the consolidation of power will already be complete. And this brings us to the most important connection of all: how Daniel's little horn prophecy links directly to the book of Revelation and the figure known as the Antichrist. The little horn of Daniel and the beast of Revelation aren't separate figures. They're the same person viewed from different prophetic perspectives. What Daniel saw as a political rise to power, John saw as a spiritual and supernatural manifestation. In Revelation 13, we see this figure described as having 10 horns and 7 heads, connecting directly to Daniel's vision of the 10-horned beast. But John adds crucial details that Daniel's vision didn't include. This figure will demand worship, will seem to die and come back to life, and will implement a global economic system that requires allegiance to participate. This is where the prophecy becomes immediately relevant to your daily life. The mark of the beast system described in Revelation isn't just about end times theology. It's about economic control, social compliance, and spiritual allegiance. And the infrastructure for such a system is being built right now. Digital currencies, social credit systems, global tracking technologies, the tools needed to implement the beast's economic control are already being tested and deployed around the world. What once seemed impossible now appears inevitable. The word Antichrist comes from the Greek antichristos, meaning against Christ, or in place of Christ. This figure won't just oppose Christianity, it will attempt to replace it entirely, positioning itself as humanity's savior and demanding the worship that belongs to God alone. As 1 John 2:18 warns us, "Children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore we know that it is the last hour." Notice that John speaks of both the Antichrist and many Antichrists. This suggests that, throughout history, we've seen figures who embodied some characteristics of the final Antichrist. Practice runs, if you will. preparing the world for the ultimate deception. Revelation 13:1-3 gives us the complete picture. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 crowns, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. Notice how this description combines elements from all of Daniel's beasts: the leopard, bear, and lion. This suggests that the final Antichrist will embody the power and characteristics of all previous world empires, creating a global system of control unlike anything in human history. The phrase, "coming up out of the sea," is significant because in biblical prophecy, the sea represents the nations, the general mass of humanity. This figure won't emerge from religious circles or announce divine appointment. He'll rise from ordinary political processes, gaining power through what appears to be normal democratic or diplomatic means. But here's the detail that should make you pay attention to current events. This figure will capture global attention by surviving what appears to be a fatal wound, possibly an assassination attempt. His miraculous recovery will convince the world that he's superhuman, leading to widespread worship and allegiance. And once he has this global platform, he'll have exactly 42 months, 3.5 years, to implement his agenda. The same time frame Daniel prophesied for the little horn's dominion. This isn't just ancient prophecy. It's a warning system designed to help us recognize when these events begin to unfold. The more we understand these prophetic details, the better prepared we'll be to respond with wisdom instead of fear, with faith instead of panic. The question isn't whether these prophecies will be fulfilled. Biblical prophecy has a perfect track record. The question is, will you recognize the signs when they appear? Will you be prepared for what's coming? And will you help others understand what they're witnessing? Because right now, as you're processing this information, the stage is being set for these ancient prophecies to become tomorrow's headlines. The only question remaining is, how much time do we have left? What you're about to discover will fundamentally change how you see every news headline from now on. Because the little horn doesn't work alone. There's a second figure, one that most people know nothing about, who will make the Antichrist's deception so complete, so convincing, that billions will willingly surrender everything they hold dear. Here's what kept me awake after researching this. The second beast isn't coming to force people into submission. It's coming to make them beg for it. I'm about to reveal 3 things that will make you question everything you thought you knew about religious authority, modern technology, and human nature itself. First, how a religious figure will use supernatural power to deceive the entire world. Second, the mark that will control every aspect of human existence, and why people will line up to receive it. And third, the number that's been hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years, waiting for its moment to be revealed. But here's the part that should terrify you. The infrastructure for everything I'm about to describe is already being built around us right now. The second beast emerges not from political chaos like the first, but from religious deception. Revelation 13:11 describes it this way: "Then I saw another beast rising up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke like a dragon." Notice that phrase, "like a lamb." This figure will appear gentle, spiritual, even Christ-like. But when it speaks, the voice reveals its true nature, like a dragon. The same dragon that gave power to the first beast. This isn't just any religious leader. This is the ultimate false prophet, and its deception will be so complete that it will fool people who consider themselves spiritually discerning. And here's what should make you pay attention to current religious movements. This false prophet won't come preaching obvious heresy. It will come speaking the language of faith, hope, and unity. It will solve religious conflicts, bridge denominational divides, and offer spiritual solutions to global problems. But that's just the beginning. What this second beast does next reveals the true scope of the end times deception. And it involves power that goes beyond anything we've seen in human history. Revelation 13 verses 13 to 14 tells us exactly how this deception will work. He performs great signs, even making fire fall from the sky to the earth, right before people's eyes. And he deceives those who inhabit the earth because of the signs which he is given to perform. Stop and think about this for a moment. In an age of special effects, deep fakes, and technological illusions, what would it take to convince the world that someone has supernatural power? The answer is simple: actual supernatural power. This false prophet won't rely on camera tricks or stage magic. It will call down literal fire from heaven, perform undeniable miracles, and demonstrate power that no human technology can explain. And here's the crucial detail: these won't be fake miracles. They'll be real supernatural acts powered by Satan himself to deceive the nations. But the miracles are just the setup for something far more sinister. The false prophet's ultimate goal isn't to amaze people, it's to control them. And the method it uses will tap into the deepest human psychological need: the need to belong, to participate, to survive. Here's where the prophecy becomes immediately relevant to your daily life. The mark of the beast system isn't primarily religious. It's economic. Revelation 13, 16 to 17 lays out the system with chilling precision. And he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. And he decrees that no one will be able to buy or to sell, except the one who has the mark. Read that again slowly. No one will be able to buy or sell without the mark. Not some people. Not most people. Everyone. This isn't just about religious persecution. This is about economic survival. And here's what should make you pay attention to current technological developments. We already have the infrastructure to implement this system. Digital currencies, biometric identification, social credit systems, contactless payments. Every piece needed for the mark of the beast economy is already being tested and deployed around the world. The false prophet won't need to invent new technology. It will simply unify and mandate what already exists. And here's the psychological genius of the system. It won't be presented as oppression. It will be marketed as convenience, security, and progress. But there's one detail about this mark that most people miss, and it's the key to understanding why people will eagerly accept it despite the obvious risks. The mark isn't just about economics. It's about identity and belonging. In a world where exclusion from the economic system means death, the mark becomes a symbol of acceptance, participation, and survival. People won't take it reluctantly. They'll demand it desperately. We've already seen this psychology in action. During recent global crises, the mark of the beast system will exploit this same psychological need on a global scale. And this brings us to the number that's been waiting in the shadows of human history for nearly 2,000 years: 666. Revelation 13:18 issues both a challenge and a warning. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Notice that this verse calls for wisdom and understanding. The number 666 isn't random. It's a code, a signature, a mathematical fingerprint that will identify the Antichrist when he's revealed. The number 6 in biblical numerology represents human imperfection, falling just short of 7, which symbolizes divine completeness. 3 sixes together suggest ultimate human rebellion, humanity trying to achieve perfection without God, reaching for divinity through human effort alone. Throughout history, the number 666 has appeared in various forms, from ancient calculation systems to modern technology. But here's what makes this prophetically significant. When the Antichrist is revealed, this number will be unmistakably connected to his identity, his system, and his mark. But understanding the number is just the beginning. What you really need to know is why people will not only accept this system, but fight to defend it. The Antichrist's appeal won't come from force. It will come from charisma, solutions, and hope. Daniel tells us this figure will be eloquent, attractive, and persuasive. In a world exhausted by crisis, division, and uncertainty, he'll offer exactly what people are desperate to hear. And here's the psychological hook that will capture billions. He won't just promise to solve problems, he'll actually solve them. Economic prosperity, political stability, religious unity, global peace. Everything the world has been crying out for, he'll deliver. But there's a price for this utopia, and most people will pay it gladly, without realizing what they're giving up. Revelation 13:8 reveals the scope of this deception. All who dwell on the earth will worship him. Not some people, not most people, all people, except those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Think about that for a moment. In our polarized world where people can't agree on anything, what would it take to unite humanity under one leader? The answer is crisis so severe that any solution becomes acceptable. And this brings us to the most chilling question of all. What happens to those who refuse to participate in this system? Without the mark, you can't buy food, pay rent, receive medical care, or participate in society. But here's what's even worse. Those who refuse the mark won't just face economic exclusion. They'll face execution. Revelation 13:15 is brutally clear. The false prophet will cause those who do not bow down and worship the image of the beast to be put to death. This isn't abstract theology. This is practical reality. The choice will be simple. Take the mark and live, or refuse and die. And here's the psychological pressure that will break most people. This won't just affect individuals. It will affect families, children, communities. But there's one detail about the mark that changes everything. And it reveals why this choice is so much more significant than just physical survival. Taking the mark isn't just an economic decision. It's a spiritual one. The Bible makes it clear that receiving the mark involves worshiping the beast. It's not just about survival. It's about allegiance, identity, and eternal destiny. Revelation 14:9-10 reveals the eternal consequences. If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. This is where the prophecy becomes personal. The mark isn't just about temporary convenience or survival. It's about eternal destiny. Those who take it will face God's undiluted wrath forever. And this leads us to one of the most terrifying aspects of the end times. What happens when God's patience finally runs out? The 7 bowls of Revelation represent God's final judgment on those who've chosen the beast's system over his kingdom. These aren't symbolic judgments, they're literal, physical consequences that will devastate the earth. Painful sores will break out on those who have the mark. Water will turn to blood. The sun will scorch the earth with intense heat. Darkness will cover the beast's kingdom. And through it all, those who've taken the mark will refuse to repent. Here's what's truly chilling. Even as these judgments fall, people will continue to worship the beast. The deception will be so complete, the commitment so total, that obvious divine judgment won't change their minds. But here's what you need to remember. These judgments aren't random acts of divine anger. They're the natural consequences of humanity's final rebellion, and they serve as warnings even in their severity. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle: how this global system will ultimately collapse and what rises from its ashes. Revelation 17 reveals that 10 kings will give their power to the beast, creating a global government unlike anything in human history. But here's the detail that changes everything. Their unity is temporary, and their defeat is certain. Revelation 17:14 declares, "They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers." The Antichrist will double down on his reign of terror. The final battle, the Battle of Armageddon, will be set in motion. The countdown begins here. What unfolds next is written, and it's more real than we've ever imagined. And from this moment on, the world will never be the same again. This is the turning point for all humanity, and what you do with it could determine your eternity. This isn't just about the past. What we're about to see has everything to do with the return of Jesus himself. But here's the thing. No matter how powerful the Antichrist appears, his time is running out. The bridegroom arrives. But what a sight! This is a side of Jesus that no one has seen before. He's complex, and now we're seeing him in a completely new way. One thing is clear. While Jesus was not a fighter during his first visit to earth, he will be when he comes again. You can't put Jesus in a box or label him as just one thing. He's a warrior when he needs to be. The Son of God goes forth to war. The first time Jesus came to earth, he rode a donkey. That symbolized peace. But the second time, he won't be on a donkey. He'll be on a horse, the mount of a warrior. He's coming to fight. The difference between his two comings is this. The first time, he came to save and heal. The second time, he's coming to judge and fight. If you can't see both of these sides of Jesus, then you don't fully know him yet. You've only seen part of who he is, and your view of him is too small. This may stretch you, and some people feel so uncomfortable with this side of Jesus that they try to avoid it by going back to the Gospels. But you can't do that. If you do, you're running away from Jesus. And if you turn away now, you might miss the most important truth of your life. What happens next will demand a response. Let's look at this picture of him. First, look at the horse. It's a war horse, a charger, not a donkey. A donkey isn't useful in battle, but a horse is. He has an army with him too. Look at his titles: faithful and true. He keeps his promises and his word. Look at his purpose. He's coming to judge and make war in righteousness. Some people laugh at the idea of a just war, but here it is, the first and maybe the only truly just war in history. This war will be righteous. Now look at his appearance. His eyes are flaming with fire. Nothing is hidden from those eyes, and they burn with anger. He has many crowns on his head, showing his complete authority and sovereignty. Look at his names. One is the Word of God, and another is a name we don't even know. This shows a new part of his character that requires a new name. Look at his clothes. A robe that's a mix of white and red. White linen stained with blood. Sometimes, when I take communion and see the white bread and the red wine, I think of Jesus who's coming again. The same colors, white and red, remind us of his return. Look at his army behind him. During his time on earth, Jesus said, "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels?" That's 12,000 troops. At that time, he didn't use them. But now he will. Against men. Look at his weapons, a sword and a rod. The sword comes from his mouth. Jesus fights with his words, and his words can heal or destroy. Above all, look at his title, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. No matter how many kings have existed, he's the supreme king. I remember watching the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. At one point, she was handed the Bible and told that it was the only law she was subject to. Here is the royal law. These are the lively oracles of God. In other words, even though she was queen, her authority was under someone greater, God. No one is higher than Jesus. He is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. What an amazing picture of Jesus. Here's the interesting part. This picture is what the Jews hoped was happening on Palm Sunday. They got one thing wrong, though, the timing. Many think they misunderstood Jesus, but they didn't. They knew their Bibles and believed God would send a conqueror to save them from their enemies. They knew God promised to set Jerusalem free. The only thing they got wrong was when it would happen. When Jesus came riding in on the donkey that day, they didn't realize he wasn't coming yet to restore the kingdom to Israel. So they shouted, "Hosanna," which means "Save us now," and "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Those words come from a passage where God promises to fight their enemies and defeat them. They weren't wrong to shout that. They just had the wrong time. Jesus couldn't defeat the enemies until he first came to die for them. That's what they misunderstood. When Jesus left the earth at the Ascension, his followers asked him, "Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" They wanted to know when he would fulfill that promise. Jesus didn't say, "I'm never going to do that. You have it all wrong." Instead, he said, "It is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority. He will do it, but not yet." This is where many people have misunderstood Jesus. They thought he chose a donkey because he would never fight. But that's not true. It was because it wasn't yet God's time to restore the kingdom. On Palm Sunday, they hoped he would take action, but it wasn't the right time. Now, in this passage, he comes to do what they had been waiting for. A very humbling thought that we can have is that the way we see Jesus in the movies and popular shows like The Chosen will not be the way we will see him again. The next time Jesus is seen, he will be very different. His appearance will be different, and he will have a new mission to fulfill. Now here's something most people miss. The little horn doesn't die in a long war. He doesn't get assassinated. He doesn't surrender. He's destroyed by the return of Jesus Christ. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 8 says, "Whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming." One moment, he's ruling the world. The next, he's gone. No sword, no army, just the brightness of Christ. That's all it takes. Back in Daniel 7, something dramatic happens. Right after the little horn rises, Daniel sees a courtroom in heaven. Daniel 7, verses 9 to 10. "I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. Books are opened, judgment begins, and the end is sealed. Daniel 7 verse 11 says, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. That's it. The little horn dies by fire. No one saves him, because no one can. This is the part that hits hard. For 3.5 years, the little horn looks untouchable. He demands worship. He controls money. He kills believers. He sits in the temple and claims to be God. But then, he's thrown into the lake of fire. Revelation 19 verse 20 says, And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Alive. No trial, no negotiation, just judgment. Fast, final, forever. What will the world look like after the little horn is gone? Will it be empty? Will it be peaceful? Will it be full of life? According to Isaiah 2 verse 4, this is what happens. He shall judge among the nations, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Peace, real peace. No more war. No more global lies. The curse is broken. The world begins to heal. Now, let's be honest. Before this happens, things will get worse. Much worse. The saints will be persecuted. Martyrs will fall. Nations will burn. There will be confusion, fear, and it will feel like the little horn has won. But that's not the end. That's just the fire before the glory. And those who endure will shine. Daniel 12 verse 3. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. Your suffering has a purpose. Your battle is not in vain. Here's something most people don't realize. Jesus didn't just come to save souls. He came to build a kingdom. In Luke 1 verse 33, the angel tells Mary, And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. From the very beginning, God's goal was not escape, it was restoration. The Garden of Eden wasn't just a paradise, it was a kingdom. And when Jesus returns, he brings that kingdom back. Here's a sobering truth. Just because the little horn is gone, doesn't mean everyone gets in. Matthew 25, verses 31 to 32. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them. Some will enter the kingdom. Others will face judgment. The wheat and the tares will be separated, the sheep and the goats. The end of the Antichrist is not a blanket ticket into heaven. You still have to choose now. Here's where the pressure rises. The little horn hasn't risen yet in full. But the system? It's being built. Digital control, false peace, one world ideas. The stage is being set, and the only safe place is in Christ now. Because when the horn rises, there won't be time to switch sides. And when he falls, only the faithful will reign with Jesus. Most people never ask this, but you should. Could you reign with Jesus? Would you be found faithful? Would he say, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? Or would you be on the outside, watching the kingdom come, but not part of it? Now is the time to decide. Not after the horn rises, not after the system forms, but now, You've seen the rise, you've seen the fall. But what comes after is everything God promised: peace, glory, power, restoration, but only for those who endure. So I ask you, are you ready? Not just to survive, but to reign? Notice that phrase. With him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Even in the darkest hour of human history, God's people won't be forgotten. Those who refuse the mark, who maintain their faith despite persecution, will stand with Christ in his victory. And here's the detail that should give you hope. The beast's reign is limited. Daniel tells us it will last 3.5 years. Revelation confirms the same time frame. No matter how powerful this system becomes, it has an expiration date set by God himself. So how does this apply to your life right now? As you watch world events unfold, as you see technology advancing, as you observe political alliances forming, remember, you're witnessing the stage being set for these ancient prophecies to become reality. The question isn't whether these events will happen. Biblical prophecy has a perfect track record. The question is, will you be prepared when they do? Jesus warned us in Matthew 24:24 that the deception would be so complete it would deceive even the elect, if possible. But he also gave us the antidote to deception: knowledge of his word. When you know what the Bible teaches about these events, you can't be caught off guard. When you understand the little horn's characteristics, you can recognize the deception. When you're grounded in truth, you can stand firm when the world is falling apart. Remember, the little horn story doesn't end with triumph. It ends with total defeat. Daniel 7:26 promises, "But the court will sit, and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever." Every earthly power that has ever opposed God has fallen. Babylon fell. Rome fell. Stalin fell. And the little horn will fall too, along with every system that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. Revelation 11:15 gives us the end of the story. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. That's the future we're moving toward. Not the temporary reign of the beast, but the eternal kingdom of Christ. A kingdom of justice, peace, and righteousness that will never end. So what can you do right now? First, stay alert. Learn to recognize the signs of the times and prepare your heart for what's coming. Second, stay grounded in God's word. When deception is everywhere, truth becomes your anchor. And third, stay hopeful. No matter how dark the world becomes, remember, we know how the story ends. The little horn will rise, but Christ will reign. The beast will deceive, but truth will prevail. The mark will control, but freedom will come. This isn't just ancient prophecy. It's your future hope. In our next deep dive, we're going to explore something even more shocking. How the technology being developed right now isn't just setting the stage for the mark of the beast. It's already testing the compliance mechanisms that will make the global system possible. If this opened your eyes to what's really happening in our world, share it with someone who needs to understand. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what we're uncovering together is too important to miss. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay faithful. And remember, God's kingdom is coming, and nothing can stop it. The only question that remains is, when the choice comes, and it will come, which side will you choose?